been falling behind a little bit on math, I think. Like last month I showed that Euclid's fifth postulate does not hold for systems of mathematics that have numbers. But it's been like a month. I haven't done very much since then. So, yeah. A thing I've been working on is the axiom of choice and its consequences. On the surface, actually, I don't have any intuitive opposition to the axiom of choice. Just looking at it, it looks fine. The problem is some of the consequences of it. And ironically, the problems that I have are different than what most people have. So, like, the blach paradox. I feel like that makes sense. It's the other shit. What is it? Tikhonov's theorem? Something like that. It's that shit that looks shady to me. And there's some reasons for it. But I think what's happening with blach in particular, this is the one I've been thinking about. As I was trying to get a handle on what was going on with this. Like, why was I finding that to be sensical, but the rest of it to be problematic? So I was like, reading a lot of stuff and chatting with AI bots, just trying to get my head around it, like asking them to explain it to me, and then you can respond to it, so it'll give something back. And after a few iterations of that, and then checking that against like publications and stuff, it's a pretty useful tool to kind of get your head around things. It occurred to me after this, and it was more like shoved down my throat, that I think the problem with blach, the reason it's viewed as a paradox, is it's a consequence of the paradox of the reals. So fundamentally what you have there is the way the reals are defined. You end up having infinitely many points in a monad, in an infinitesimal monad, that are all being identified by one single real value, and that real value is Archimedean within, allegedly. There's problems with that, but it's supposed to be an Archimedean value. So that excludes infinitesimals. So the surreal extension of the reals, none of the surreals, none of the non-real surreals are included in this, and there's infinitely many of those for any tiny little region that you can identify with a real number. So this messes with Lebesgue measure theory, because that operates over the reals, and it assumes that the reals are correct. So what I think what's happening here, and I'm fairly confident of this, but I could be wrong. I think what's happening here is you have the blach paradox is we're taking the axiom of choice to look into the set of points that some object is made out of. We're taking basically a dust. It's not necessarily a dust, but it's basically, for most intents and purposes, it's a dust, right? You're picking out scattered individual points. Because of the axiom of choice, you have a hypothetical algorithm to be able to do this, and then you take some of those dusts out of that space, and you combine them somewhere else, and you end up with an object that has the same Lebesgue measure as the original figure. Right? So you end up with multiple figures, two, or you can get, I'm pretty sure you can get infinitely many. But the blach paradox is specifically two. Or, well, no, it isn't. Anyway, the way it's normally presented is a two. Out of 5 pieces is the modern version of it. I think we can actually get it much more interesting than that. But yeah. So the idea here is somehow you're creating. So like the standard idea would be like, say you have like a tennis ball or something, and in a mathematical space you could disassemble that tennis ball into a handful of pieces, reassemble those pieces, and get two tennis balls, and they are exactly the original tennis ball. Both of the new tennis balls are the same as that original tennis ball in every measurable capacity. Right, so they'll have the same Lebesgue measure. But like I said, I think the problem here is that Lebesgue measure is operating over the reals. So what we're doing is the reals are denying the distinct identity of infinitely many points that are infinitesimally close together, and that is a problem. And the only ways you can even approach this is if you use non-standard analysis, which is annoying because everybody assumes standard analysis. They assume the completeness of the reals. They assume all of that bullshit. Anyway, yeah. And then you need the axiom of choice to be able to distinguish between these somehow, magically. And that's why it's a paradox, because the axioms that you're given within like standard Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory or anything analogous, it has no mechanism to identify a dust like that. So it's just this magical paradox that this occurs. But under my non-standard approach, we're at recognizing infinitesimals, and I have the infinitesimal unit function, so I can identify distinct infinitesimal fields. Which each field is Archimedean unto itself, but it is asymmetric with every other field. So we don't need the axiom of choice. We specifically have a choice function that allows us to do this directly. So it's not a paradox, because I can just go in and do it. I know how to pull out these pieces that will, when I take them, and I can actually do it so well that I can take two. I can just take two pieces. I don't need five. I can take two pieces, separate them, and then they will have the same Lebesgue measure, because the infinitesimal differences between the points from one dust to the other, they'll still analyze to the same real points, so it'll have the same measure in real space, because that's what a Lebesgue measure is. So it satisfies the Banach-Tarski paradox. I'm fairly confident this is right. Everything I've seen says that I'm misunderstanding something, but then it just like stomps its feet and says, but it's a paradox. Like, so that's not an explanation. I don't know. It's kind of where I'm at right now. But I'm also working on Mongo, a crappy bash interpreter for Mongo, just to fiddle with it, just to get like the most, right? So it's getting out of C and Python, right? Because I hate those languages. I'm not a huge fan of Bash either, but it's much more platform agnostic. So yeah, and I think it's hilarious to have a high-performance interpreted language that's run by a Bash script. I think that's fucking great. Plus, it's infinitely extensible because it's already in the terminal. You're already able to just run terminal commands, right? So like you already have full access to everything in the operating system, and any other thing that you could write in any other language, you have direct access to it. So, yeah. That's not quite working yet, so I'm working on that. But yeah, I've kind of been falling behind, I think, with the math a little bit this month. So that's pretty much where we're at.